Here's something most dog owners never consider. The people causing the most psychological damage to their dogs are usually the most devoted ones, not the neglectful owners, not the abusive ones, the ones who read the articles, watch the videos, and genuinely believe they're doing everything right. That's the hidden pattern researchers in animal cognition have been tracking for decades. The problem isn't indifference, the problem is misinformation that feels correct. Advice so embedded in dog culture that questioning it feels absurd. What we're covering today aren't cute misconceptions. They're behavioral traps. 7 of them. Each one is actively rewiring how your dog processes its environment at a neurological level. And the longer they run uncorrected, the more invisible the damage becomes. The cultural consensus on dogs goes something like this. They're forgiving, emotionally simple creatures who thrive on affection, consistent praise, and human connection. The more love you give, the better they do. That belief is reinforced constantly by media, by casual advice, by decades of training culture built on the assumption that dogs and humans emotionally operate on the same frequency. It produces confident owners, and confidence in this context is exactly what makes the damage invisible. What's actually happening inside your dog is something different. Dogs operating under myth-based management don't just show behavioral quirks, they show measurable neurological dysregulation. Research from the University of Lincoln found that dogs process human emotional cues with a left hemisphere brain bias, the same hemisphere humans use for language processing. That means misread signals from you don't simply confuse your dog, they trigger anticipatory anxiety loops. The dog's brain isn't filing your signal as unclear. It's filing it as a threat pattern it hasn't decoded yet. Your dog isn't misbehaving. Your dog is responding correctly to incorrect information. Here are the 7 myths, sequenced by psychological damage severity. Myth 1. Hugging equals comfort. It doesn't. It triggers a restrained stress response. Myth 2. The guilt face means your dog feels remorse. It doesn't. Alexandra Horowitz at Barnard College demonstrated in 2009 that the guilty look is learned appeasement behavior, a response to your body language, not moral awareness. Myth 3. Dominance-based correction teaches respect. What it actually does is spike cortisol chronically. University of Porto research in 2017 showed measurable hormonal disruption in dogs trained with aversive methods. Myth 4. Free feeding is a form of love. Structurally, it removes one of the primary predictability anchors in your dog's day. Myth 5. Letting your dog lead the walk gives them freedom. Behaviorally, it assigns them a navigation role they're not equipped to manage. Myth 6. Correcting a dog after the fact teaches a lesson. It doesn't. It creates random anxiety. Myth 7. Breed determines personality. Breed shapes tendency. Environment and owner behavior shape outcome. The pattern across all 7, well-meaning, misread, neurological consequence. When your dog's stress signals are consistently misread or accidentally punished, something specific happens. The dog doesn't escalate, it goes quiet. This is the most dangerous phase, and most owners miss it entirely because it looks like improvement. The dog that used to growl stops growling. The dog that used to pace settles down. Owners interpret this as progress. Veterinary behaviorists will tell you otherwise. Most bite incidents are preceded by months of suppressed communication. Warning signals the dog stopped offering because they'd learned those signals produced no useful response. The good dog is sometimes a dog that has stopped trying to communicate at all. Here's the difference between a dog receiving accurate owner feedback and a myth-managed dog. A dog with clear, consistent signals shows predictable stress recovery cycles. It encounters something unsettling, displays a stress behavior, a yawn, a head turn, a displacement scratch, recovers within a window, and returns to baseline. A myth-managed dog shows flattened affect, hypervigilance, or emotional flooding with no recovery window. The behavioral markers are measurable, elevated yawning frequency outside of fatigue context, persistent avoidance posture, repetitive displacement behaviors that serve no situational purpose. The difference isn't temperament, it's the quality of information the dog has received over time. The mechanism through which myths cause lasting damage is classical conditioning. Every repetition of a myth-based interaction creates a conditioned association in the dog's brain. Pavlovian fear conditioning research, applied to domestic dogs, shows that even a single high-arousal misread event can create a conditioned fear response that persists for months without behavioral intervention. The brain isn't processing the experience as a mistake, it's filing it as survival data. The nervous system doesn't distinguish between your intention and the signal it received. It only records the pattern. Here's where the gap becomes sharpest. You believe you're teaching calm. Your dog is learning that calm precedes something unpredictable. You believe praise is motivating. Your dog is learning that excitement spikes, signal a loss of environmental control. You believe physical affection communicates safety. Depending on the context and the dog's stress threshold, your dog may be learning that proximity means restraint. Your intention is completely invisible to your dog's nervous system. The dog doesn't receive intent. It receives input. The problem compounds. Research from the University of Vienna in 2019 demonstrated cortisol synchronization between dogs and their long-term owners. Chronic stress hormones don't just exist in parallel, they co-regulate. A chronically anxious owner operating on myth-based instincts isn't just sending confusing signals. They're physiologically sharing their dysregulation with the dog. The dog isn't reacting to the situation. In many cases, the dog is reacting to the owner's nervous system. And because the owner's anxiety is being driven in part by the dog's behavior, the loop becomes self-reinforcing. Neither party can stabilize because each one is calibrating off the other's instability. The standard advice for myth-damaged dogs makes it worse. More socialization, more affection, firmer correction. These responses treat the symptom while deepening the root condition. The American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior's position statement explicitly rejects dominance-based methods, not on ethical grounds alone, but on behavioral grounds. They produce suppression, not learning. Shelters and behaviorists see the outcome regularly. Dogs whose presenting issues escalated directly under conventional advice, delivered with good intentions. The most dangerous advice is always the advice that sounds the most reasonable. There's a concept in veterinary ethology called role ambiguity stress. A dog that has received inconsistent behavioral information develops no stable behavioral identity. Unlike wolves or feral dogs operating within clear social structures, the myth-managed domestic dog lives in perpetual social ambiguity. Ethological research consistently shows that ambiguity, not harshness, is the primary driver of chronic low-grade stress in companion animals. Your dog doesn't know what it's supposed to be in relation to you, to the environment, to the rules. That uncertainty is biologically exhausting. It doesn't look dramatic. It looks like a dog that's just a little off, a little unpredictable, a little hard to read. That's the signature. At the hormonal level, the consequences are documented. Chronic cortisol elevation, suppressed oxytocin bonding response, dysregulation of the HPA axis, the system governing how the body manages stress at a baseline level. Veterinary endocrinology data shows that dogs in high ambiguity environments exhibit immune suppression markers consistent with chronic stress models. The behavioral symptoms owners notice: unexplained aggression, digestive irregularity, compulsive behaviors, disrupted sleep, are downstream effects. The myths aren't just a training problem, they're a health problem. The behavior is the symptom. The stress architecture underneath it is the disease. The correction isn't a list of new tips. It's a diagnostic shift in how you approach the relationship. Start by auditing your own behavior against the 7 myths. Which ones are currently active in how you interact with your dog? Not in theory, in practice, daily. Second, learn to read canine calming signals as your primary feedback system. Tuad Rugas's research on stress signals gives you a measurable language your dog is already speaking. You just haven't been trained to hear it. Third, introduce what behavioral scientists call predictability architecture, consistent, low-arousal cues that allow your dog to build an accurate anticipatory map of their environment. Tugs don't need excitement, they need to know what comes next. Fourth, stop reinforcing the myth-driven interaction, not the dog's response to it. The dog is responding correctly. Your input is what changes. This is owner recalibration, not a dog training program. Your dog already knows how to be a dog. The problem is that you haven't yet learned how to be readable. Good ownership, defined through a behavioral science lens, has nothing to do with love. It has nothing to do with intention or affection or effort. It means clarity, consistency, accurate signal transmission. Your dog doesn't need an emotional parent. It needs a legible environment. The 7 myths persist because they feel loving, but feeling loving and being understood by your dog are 2 entirely different neurological events. The most caring thing you can do isn't to give more. It's to become someone your dog can actually read. Go through the 7 myths again and be honest about which ones you've been running. Not the ones you used to use, the ones that are still active right now. Comment the number below. And if you want to see a full behavioral breakdown of one specific myth, the science, the signal patterns, The correction, that's the next video.